What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another CD collection update for you guys. It's been a little bit since the last one, and I'm finally back with another one, as I do finally have a pretty nifty stack of some pretty cool stuff that I had gotten from primarily online, but also I did get one of them sent to me by a subscriber of this channel, and I'll have all the album information, like the album title and the band in the description for you guys to see ahead of time. But here we are to talk about 15 CDs that I got ever since the last update, which I think was late February, somewhere in that time frame. So it's been a couple of months since the last update, and actually, as we speak, currently working on the next stack. So without further ado, let's get started. So first we have Akercocke, the Goat of Mendes. This is the second studio full-length from this British, at the time, just blackened death metal band before evolving into progressive blackened death metal. And yeah, this is a band I feel a lot of people that I talk to a lot should check out, because this is just absolutely fantastic blackened death metal. It basically takes the best elements of both black metal and death metal. I would say this is more on the death metal side than it is of black metal, even though it's got like the sinister quality and the sinister nature of like black metal, but for the most part, it's very more towards death metal. The big song that I would certainly hope that most metalheads have ever heard from this band was from this album, the track Horns of Baphomet. That song is just blackened death metal perfection. And it's almost like a tale of two halves kind of song. Like, the first part of the song is mostly like blackened doom with like little hints of like blackened tremolos. The black metal screams, I hate to say it, kind of remind me of Danny Filth, but it's not squealy like Danny Filth. It's more like Danny Filth's traditional black metal delivery, which I do enjoy. So Jason Madonka doing like the big harrowing black metal agonized vocals, but then you do get on that song as well, like, couple lines where he's singing, like, low and gothic and clean synths. Almost like a low gothic Maynard James Keenan. But then when you get his death metal vocals, they are amongst some of the most guttural death metal vocals I have ever heard. Like, he is channeling, like, Ross Sewage and Will Romer and a bunch of other guttural vocalists, and it sounds evil and demonic. But that song was my gateway into this band. Hell, I also recommend you guys check out the music video too. But warning, you guys might get a little extension in your trousers, because there's a lot of hot lesbians in that video, so there you go. But other cool tracks on here too, like Masks of God, Infernal Rites, Ceremony of Nine Angles, like just evil but heavy yet very complex songs. Like, I could argue this is kind of proggy, but the following album was really where they started exploring more progressive territory. I actually need to get the remainder of Akercocke's albums, but this is a good place to start, especially from their early days. This is absolutely killer. Alright, and next up we have Aquila, the Great Fire. This is the second EP from this Windsor, Ontario, Canada-based metalcore band. I actually was gifted this courtesy of one of my subscribers who happens to be the frontman of this band, Mark Aruda, which, thank you, Mark, once again. I apologize it took me so long to add this in a collection update. I just completely forgot about it, because it got lost somewhere in my other room. And then I didn't realize it was in the shelf the whole time. It just kind of blends in because there's no, like, info on the spine. But then I remembered, why don't I check the shelf? Oh, it's right there. Might as well give this a little shot here. And I will actually say this is some pretty damn solid metalcore. I would say this is a little more brutal and even at times progressive, but it's still very much metalcore. I would say this is almost um like some of the bands I would compare this to. I would say this is like a less like I don't hear really any clean vocals at all. This is all just straight up like brutal hardcore barking from Mark, which I will say Mark has a pretty vicious delivery in the vocals, like up there amongst some of the best metalcore barks or hardcore barks I have heard in quite a while. But like songwriting wise, it is heavy. It is very, very flashy at times, like especially in some of the guitar playing. It's quite flashy, which showcases like the other guy's talents on the guitars. And like the songwriting, like there are occasional prog aspects, but I would say this is mostly just straightforward metalcore. Like bands I would say to compare this to get back to after I went on to a tangent, I would say some of the best bands I would compare this to would be like Shadows Fall. I would even say to a lesser degree Darkest Hour, and I would even throw in like the really heavier Killswitch Engage songs. Like that's kind of what it reminds me of. And for an EP, this is pretty damn solid. Really, the only issue that I have with this EP was the sound of the drums, particularly the snare. Like, I don't know why, like, the snare kind of sounds electronic. Like, it doesn't sound like a real snare, but I'll let that slide because, like, the guitar playing, the vocal delivery, songwriting's pretty cool, not ghoul. Well, it can be a bit ghoulish at times with how kind of haunting this can get. But yeah, this is a pretty damn solid EP. So once again, thank you, Mark, for sending me this. This is a pretty cool listen. If you guys are curious, check out Aquila, I should say. I don't know why, for some reason, I want to keep saying Agula, but it's not. It's Aquila. So if you guys want to check out Aquila, check him out. This is actually a pretty cool EP. Excuse me. Next up, and this is one I had been on the hunt for a long time, ever since I first heard this album, like 12 years ago. And now it's finally here, courtesy of a great moment in my life. Dan Swano, Moontower. This is the lone studio full-length from Dan Swano's solo project, and you guys should know by now how much I practically worship Dan Swano. I mean, hell, for those who still may not know, I, as well as Ricky, Horror Master, my cohort on both the Shadow Cult and Horseman podcasts, he and I got to interview Swano back about almost 4 years ago. It was August 2022. I just messaged him out of the blue and said, "Hey, would you like to be on my podcast? We'd love a chance to pick your brain." And he said, "Absolutely." Granted, I had to wake up really early in the morning to do it, but it was totally worth it. And this is a fantastic album. However, I want to keep my opinion about this relatively short because this could be retro review material, not only just for me, but perhaps the next time I go visit the guys over at Thralls of Metal, we could do a retro review on this, and it would be absolutely appropriate. So I'll just say it's an awesome album. This is a reissue courtesy of Century Media Records, which, funny enough, during that interview I did with Swano, I wanted to ask him, because I love this album so much, was there ever going to be an opportunity to see a reissue of this album? And he goes verbatim, "Well, funny you mention that, because I am currently working on a distribution deal with Century Media to reissue pretty much everything that I've done." So, and that was in 2022. It didn't really start taking off until like late 2024, but it was like going through phases, essentially. I haven't gotten, other than like the one Nightingale album, I hadn't gotten any of the reissues of like Edge of Sanity, mostly because I have the OG CDs, and personally, I think most of them sound better, in my opinion, than the remixes or the remasters. But maybe with more time and diving into those new reissues, maybe I'll pick them all up. After all, I'm such a big fan, it's like, why wouldn't I? But yeah, this was the big one that I've wanted for so long. I am so happy to finally have this in the collection, and it's an amazing album. Check it out. Next up, we have Encoffination. Now I gotta remember the title. 3 Hear Me, O Death, Sing Thou Wretched Choirs. This is the third studio full-length from this Atlanta and San Diego-based Death Doom band. However, this I got curious to check out considering, like, the comparisons that this band was being given to. They were being compared to bands like Incantation was the big one. However, I gave this, like, a quick listen. I think it's almost more towards bands like Disembowelment or Winter, for example. It just so happens that occasionally you get, like, the Incantation, Apocalyptic Tremolos, but other than that, it doesn't get fast or speedy at all. It is very slow, almost Funeral Doom, I would say. Like, it's that levels of slow, and you even get, like, bells and whatnot to kind of give it that almost Funeral Doom vibe, but it is so cavernous and heavy and evil sounding. Like tracks like Charnel Bowels of a Putrescent Earth, Crowned Icons, hell, even the title track, Mold of Abandonment. Man, you want to talk about cavernous, evil, haunting, spooky, gloomy, doomy shit. This is pretty good stuff right here for that reason alone. And judging from the reviews I've heard for this band, this is the big one to check out. Like, this is one most people really, really like. So, yeah, I would say if you are a fan of, again, particularly Disembowelment, Winter, but to a lesser degree Incantation, I'd say check this out. Alright, and now we have a pair from Gaerea. So, even after reviewing the last 2 albums and not being a big fan of either, I decide, you know what, it's time to give this band more of a deep dive. So I have their debut album, Unsettling Whispers, and their third album, Mirage. And for those who are still not aware, this is a Portugal-based, well, they were black metal, and now they're kind of more, I hate to say it, have become more of an atmospheric, proggy metalcore band with little hints of black metal, if that at all. You'd have to understand with the last 2 albums, especially what I'm talking about. But I kept hearing so many times from, like, say, Necrotic Nick from Thralls of Metal that you gotta check out the early stuff when they were just straight up, like, almost atmospheric black metal. And I decided to pick up at least a couple of different ones. So, Unsettling Whispers, which came out in 2018, both of these on Season of Mist, by the way. But yeah, Unsettling Whispers, it is everything I do enjoy about, like, black metal. It's got some, like, big, giant, dissonant tremolos, but also, like, cool drum changes where it goes from, like, insane blast beats into, like, really cool, like, groove pockets, even some triplet stomps. So yeah, like, especially tracks like Sun, Whispers, and Absent. Like, the first 3 tracks really got this album propelling in a big, big way. And of course, both of these albums and their second album, Limbo, which I still need to pick up, have Ruben on vocals, not Gilherm, who took over on vocals. Although Gilherm's a great guitarist, and it definitely shows on both of these albums. But yeah, Unsettling Whispers, pretty heavy, like maybe the heavier of the 2 right here, and definitely the more extreme of the 2, but overall, really cool. Mirage, on the other hand, which came out in 2022, and I just didn't know about the band at the time, hence why I didn't review them until their album, what was it, Coma? I forget the name of the album in 2024, but regardless, this one, Mirage, is like a completely different style from Unsettling Whispers. Like, this one, it's still very much atmospheric black metal, but you get a lot more songwriting dynamics and a lot more melody coming into the play in terms of the guitar work. And it definitely shows on tracks like Salve, Deluge, Arson, the title track. Like, just big, giant melodic hooks in terms of the guitar playing, but still not losing any of its heaviness, not losing any of its extremity. And of course, the vocals are just this big, anguished, scream that Ruben delivers. So I can definitely say, if you are one to get into Gaerea, don't check out the last two albums. To me, they're both giant disappointments. If you want to check out Gaerea in their true form, check out the first three albums. So far, I only have the third one and the debut, but both of these are pretty damn excellent, so check them out. Alright, and next up we have another one-off, and that is Hallatar with No Stars Upon the Bridge. This is the lone studio full-length, at least so far, from this Finnish... they're described as like atmospheric death doom, and it definitely fits, although I would also throw in melodic death doom too. And for those who don't know, like I said, this is a Finnish band. However, this is actually a supergroup that features Tommy Yaltsen, the frontman of Amorphous. It has Juha Ravio, the guitarist and main songwriter of Swallow the Sun, and shockingly on drums, Gas Lipstick from him on drums for this. So how this album came about, so if memory serves me correctly, this was 2017 when this came out, and how this band and album came about, kind of unfortunately through tragedy. So, a couple years prior in 2015, Juha Ravio's girlfriend and amazing vocalist Aaliyah Stanbridge from Trees of Eternity unfortunately passed away after a battle with cancer, and she was only 38, I think, 39, something like that. Died really, really young, and it broke Juha's heart so much that he ended up writing this album for this project, as well as Swallow the Sun's When a Shadow is Forced into Light, basically out of grief from losing the love of his life. And granted, a year before this, actually a year after, or actually no, it was 2016 when she passed, now that I remember. But in the same year of 2016, you had the Trees of Eternity album, Hour of the Nightingale, which is just atmospheric doom that Juha actually played on. In fact, that band had like members of Swallow the Sun, October Tide, Catatonia, and it's an awesome album. Although it's very, very sad. This is like the sequel to that album in terms of the mood, the lyrical themes, and even has some leftover recordings from Aaliyah. I guess she was taking part in some of the writing of this album before she passed, like especially on the closer, Dreams Burn Down. You get some of her vocals that were probably some of the last things she did before she passed away. But yeah, this album, it is sad, but it is unbelievably fantastic. Like, big, giant, like, this definitely fits in line with, like, the Peaceville Death Doom bands, like, most especially My Dying Bride. But you could definitely get Swallow the Sun on here. I also even get, of course, like, early Catatonia. I would also even throw in bands like Daylight Dies would be a good comparison point to this. But, yeah, for a supergroup, this was awesome, and they're still active. They haven't done anything since, and I got a feeling it's because everybody's busy. Like, Tommy's busy with Amorphous, Juha's busy with Swallow the Sun, and Gas Lipstick. I don't know what he's been doing ever since him broke up, but still, this is a very sad but awesome album to check out. Give it a listen. Alright, next up we have Hypocrisy, A Taste of Extreme Divinity. This is another killer album from Hypocrisy. I'm actually trying to remember what number in the catalog it's in. I know it's probably somewhere almost into the teens, but yeah, this is 2009, so this was when it came out, but this is yet another killer offering from arguably one of the top three best melodic death metal bands that come out of Sweden. Like, it's definitely, I would say, them, At the Gates, and Edge of Sanity, I would say, are like the big three, in my personal opinion, of the Swedish melodic death metal sound. Granted, Edge of Sanity, you could say, is more progressive death metal, but you get the idea. But yeah, this album is awesome. Like, especially, you know, the opening track, Valley of the Damned, it just gets everything off on a big, high pace. It's brutal at times. Like, Weed Out the Weak is one of the catchiest but yet heaviest Hypocrisy songs of like the later albums for sure. Global Domination, man, you want to talk about great melodic hooks. Wow. Yeah, this album is just absolutely fantastic. I'm getting closer and closer to completing the Hypocrisy discography, although I'm still unsure if I'm going to get Catch 22. I don't know, but like I think the only ones now that I'm missing apart from Catch 22 are The Arrival and Virus, I think. So once I get those, I'd have basically all the Hypocrisy I want. But yeah, this is still fantastic. Check it out. Alright, I need a drink of water before I talk about this next one. Now, this actually has a really cool story attached. So, this is going to be one of the most out of left field albums that I have in all of the collection. But there is a really cool story behind it. Mickie James with Somebody's Gonna Pay. This is the second full length from my personal favorite female wrestler of all time. Because, again, for those who have only just recently subscribed to the channel and didn't know about this channel way back in the day, like I'm talking between 2011 and like 2019, this channel was primarily a pro wrestling channel. And I kept talking about wrestling all the time, and my favorite female pro wrestler of all time is Mickie James. Now, over a month ago, there was a wrestling fan fest happening about an hour north of where I live up in Chillicothe, and I wanted to go not only to meet other wrestlers, but to specifically meet Mickie James because she's my favorite in terms of ladies in the business. And when I met her, we talked for like almost 5 minutes. She was an absolute sweetheart, very, very kind, really, and still looks absolutely amazing to this day. And she was my biggest crush growing up as a preteen into my teenage years. She was my biggest crush and still remains maybe my biggest crush in wrestling history. But she actually ended up starting a country band. Now, of course, I'm not really a country fan, really at all, apart from like some Johnny Cash songs because the man was the world's greatest storyteller and just came off as a badass. I'm not really a country guy. But I actually told her about my CD collection and she thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I said, "Hey, I would like to have one of your albums." And she said, "Sure." And after we got like autographs and pictures and whatnot, and she gave me the biggest hug ever. That was awesome. But she personally signed this album, and it says, "To Levi, honored to be number 1700." Because this is my 1700th CD in the collection, at least according to this. So, yeah, this is kind of a monumental one, but I will go ahead and talk a little bit about the music. Like, again, I'm not a country guy, but for a country album, it's not bad. It's actually pretty decent. Like, the title track, the bonus track, her TNA wrestling theme song, Hardcore Country, which I do like that song. And I will say, Mickie can sing. She sounds pretty. She sounds like she can kick your ass with just her voice. So, yeah, this was absolutely a cool gift to have. But yeah, if any of you guys are curious about country music as well as being metalheads, like if any of you guys who are metalheads that don't mind country, I'd say give this a try. This is actually not bad. This is actually pretty decent. Alright, let's get back to the metal so I can get some credibility back. But next we have Mortem, Slow Death. This is actually a compilation, very interesting and unique compilation album from this Norwegian. I'm just gonna say extreme metal because their career has gone off in like a lot of different directions over the years. So, what's interesting about this compilation is that it's a 2-disc CD. This was released on Peaceville Records, where they currently are right now. For those who don't know, Mortem, this is a supergroup from Norway that features like current and former members of bands like, oh man, there's a bunch. Arcturus, Ulver, Thorns, Immortal, 1349, and the big one, Mayhem. Like Hellhammer from Mayhem is the drummer on here. So yeah. So, what makes this unique and why it's a 2-disc one? So, the first, or actually, I'll talk about the second disc first. The second disc is the band's 1989 Slow Death demo, back when they were a death metal band, which interesting considering, the narrative's been told over the years about Euronymous' hatred of death metal, even though we know he was a death metal guy prior to like 1989 or something like that, which, funny enough, was the year this demo was done. And the demo, it's like musically, it's very much like early old school death metal, but also kind of a precursor to like, I want to say like cosmic death metal. Like there are moments on here that remind me of like early Time Ghoul, but also there's a little bit of like early Morbid Angel. There are some occasional grooves that kind of remind me a little bit of like early Obituary. I'd say it's more towards Time Ghoul, even though this was 1989, so they were maybe kind of a little bit of ahead of their time at this point. And I think Euronymous actually produced that demo, and even though they tried to clean it up as best as best as they could, it's still pretty raw, but the music behind it's great. The one issue I have, especially with the recording quality, is all the crazy effects on the vocals. Like, when you hear them outside of the crazy, insane amount of reverb, they're pretty nasty death metal growls. But because there's all this reverb on top, it kind of makes the vocals sound like noise. But musically is really damn good. Recording quality wise, not the best, but again, it was a demo, they were just playing around, and that's how you get to this. The first disc, on the other hand, is essentially the songs from the demos plus 2 more tracks, but reworked in their band's now current symphonic black metal sound, like their debut full-length Ravensfart, which I think I reviewed back in 2019, and that was a killer album for a symphonic black metal release. Like, it was more towards like Emperor, early Dimmu Borgir, and like Lambonic Art and those kind of bands. Basically, they decided to work the songs from the demos, but do it in the style of their current symphonic black metal sound. And they did a pretty solid job. Like, they kind of would keep some aspects, like some certain melodies and riffs from the demo, but rework the majority of it into their current style. So I actually do appreciate that this exists, because you get to hear the songs as they were done originally in their death metal era and how they sound in their current symphonic black metal era. Granted, this is the most recent release from this band. I would love to hear another full length from this band, because Ravensfart was a killer album in 2019. So, yeah. For the demo, if you're a fan of particularly Time Ghoul, but also a little bit of like early Morbid Angel, and then on the reworked version, if you are a fan of like Emperor and early Dimmu Borgir, I'd say check this compilation out. This is actually a pretty cool, unique. Alright, next up, we have Necromantia with Crossing the Fiery Path. This is the debut full-length from this Greek black metal band that are considered legendary at this point, like up there next to Rotting Christ and a bunch of others from Greek. But yeah, this was kind of a impulsive grab, considering I've been so into that new Worm album. Still do check it out from time to time. And I heard that perhaps one of the big influences for that album was Necromantia, especially in like the vampire imagery, because yeah, this definitely comes off as vampire. I mean, look at that album cover. And I listened to it, and well, I will say musically it's awesome. Like, great early black metal, but I would say it's definitely more melodic, like kind of like early Rotting Christ, which again makes complete sense considering excuse me, considering both bands were going at the same time, and I think released their debuts the same year, 1993. The problem, though, I have with this album is the guitar tone. The guitar tone is thin and kind of listless, which kind of ruins a little bit of the album for me a little bit, but it doesn't take away from the great songwriting on here. Like songs like Lord of the Abyss, Tribes of the Moon. Like there are some great musical ideas on here. Like the songs are great, but the guitar tone is so thin and just not great. So yeah, it's kind of a tough one, but of course, I mean, it was a cool foundation for the band in terms of musically speaking. They just need to get the recording right, which I haven't checked out the rest of their stuff. I do intend on getting their second album at some point, and from what I heard, that one was like a vast improvement in terms of production. So, yeah, perhaps when the time comes, I'll get that. But I mean, for what it is musically, it's great, but of course, the recording quality does suffer big time. But if you're a fan of, Rotting Christ, I would even throw in like Mortuary Drape, like those kind of bands. I'd say give this a listen, but be warned, guitar tones, not great. Alright, next up we got another one-off, Necrony, Pathological Performances. This is the lone studio full-length from this Swedish death metal slash death grind band, and basically, I completely forgot about this until rewatching some of Necrotic Nick's CD collection updates to be like, okay, I'm curious to hear like these older videos to kind of see if there was anything that I might have missed. And Necrony came up, and I was like, you know what? I might as well give this a shot, get it. And this is gnarly stuff. This was basically the two main members, the big one being Anders Jacobson, both would go on to form Nasum, which, funny enough, Nasum was initially the side project and Necrony was the main band, but once this band broke up, Nasum became the main thing. But yeah, this is just like a lot of people would say, it is 100% carcass worship, and it's like in between, like, this could have been like the transitional album between Symphonies of Sickness and Necroticism. Like, there's not really a whole lot of melody, there's like little hints of it, but this is mostly just bludgeoning, heavy, grindy death metal. Of course, Dan Swano, I believe, did the production on here, and even does some guest vocals on here too. But because you get a lot of those pitch shifted vocals at times, it's kind of hard to tell who's doing what. But still, some killer songs, and this could be another retro review down the road for a bunch of people. So yeah, check this out. This is pretty fun. Alright, next up we have Protector, A Shedding of Skin. This is the third studio full-length from this German death thrash band, very legendary. I've gone over their last couple of albums, and they have been fantastic. But I decided, you know what, I need to get their early stuff, because I hear, like, especially the first three albums are, like, the essential Protector albums, and this one might be the biggest of them all. And yeah, it is just heavy, it is brutal, it is intense. Like, Mortuary Nightmare and the title track alone just absolutely obliterates you in every way possible. It is insane, it is just everything I like about, like, death metal and thrash metal, all perfectly mixed together into this album in 1991. So yeah, check this out. Next up, the penultimate CD we have is Soilwork, Predator's Portrait. This is the third studio full-length from this legendary Swedish melodic death metal band, and I figured, you know what, it was time to get some Soilwork in my collection, and this was the big one that, like, Nick and a bunch of others talk about, and they're right, this is some fantastic high energy melodic death metal. Like, it's not like super heavy, it gets aggressive at times, but man, the melodies are so strong. And of course, Speed's vocals, not only in like the screamy department, but even occasionally when the clean vocals show up here, they are absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I'm glad to finally get this one. Like, the big tracks that I enjoyed were Bastard Chain, Needle Feast, Erotica, Rampage, Grand Failure Anthem, the title track. Just awesome songs. Great songwriting. Now it's gotten me wanting to check out some more Soilwork down the road. But yeah, check this out if you have. And finally, we have Violent Force, Malevolent Assault of Tomorrow. This is the lone studio full-length from this rather forgotten about German thrash metal band. So, yeah, this one I kind of discovered almost by accident, but I had always heard the name Violent Force, courtesy of like interviews and documentaries, but I never really checked them out until just doom scrolling on Instagram, and I came across his profile who has the vinyl of this album, and he was talking about how this was like some of the most extreme German thrash for the time. And I was like, you know what? I better check this out and see what it's all about. This is unbelievably fantastic German thrash. Like, the best way I could describe this album is like this came out in 1987 on Roadrunner Records, if you can believe it or not, but this is a reissue on High Roller Records. And what's cool about this and how I would describe this album is if it sat somewhere in between Metallica Kill 'Em All and Sodom Agent Orange. Because, like, the recording quality, yeah, this was 1987, but it kind of sounds like almost towards, like, 83, 84 quality, like, early Metallica. There's even some riffs and some beats on there that kind of remind me of stuff you would hear on Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning. But also you get some, like, Motorhead energy on here, but the big thing is Sodom, like, Persecution Mania, and this almost is, like, a precursor to Sodom Agent Orange at times. This also features the late great Atomic Steiff from Living Death and later Sodom. He played drums on 3 songs on here. I don't want to go too further in depth because this was discussed between myself and Necrotic Nick the next time I visit them. This could be a retro review that we'll do together. So I want to save most of what I have to say for that if that happens. But yeah, I'd say check this out. This is pretty killer. And that, ladies and gentlemen, does it for yet another CD collection update. Yeah, this is a long one, man, almost 40 minutes, although it's going to be trimmed down a little bit. But yeah, just some pretty cool stuff I got, including a bunch of one-offs that I came across either by accident or I've been needing to get for a while. Like I said, I'm currently working on my next stack. So far, I've got 2 all ready to go for the next stack, but I obviously need to get at least up to 15 to do an update video because I don't like doing less than that. But anyways, what's your guys' favorite album out of everything that I showed in this update? Let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And before I go, how you guys liking this new setup? It's kind of back to how I had it set up with GoPro, but I instead am doing it with the webcam and the good microphone and such. And I'm really liking this setup because I basically did some rearranging in here to make it a little bit more roomy. And this is what I got, so I'm pretty happy with it. But anyways, thank you guys for watching, and until next time, keep your horns high and your dreams wet.